We're live for the first episode of the ChAI Chat podcast. I'm your host, Jomar Gacoscos, and I'm here joined by Ads Dawson. Ads, welcome to the chat. Welcome to the pod.
Thank you so much. It is absolute pleasure. Dope name of the podcast. I love
Yeah.
it. Super dig it. And no, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure being the first. So thank you very much.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, always. And I guess before we dive into it, I guess the story behind how I met Ads was, I think it was at 2022 DefCon. And for those who aren't familiar with DefCon in itself, it's one of the biggest security conferences out there. It's typically held annually in Las Vegas, and yeah, that's where Ads and I coincidentally met. And I guess the specifics behind that too is that DefCon isn't like any other kind of conference where you sign up beforehand and such. So for DefCon, you actually have to line up, I guess, to get your actual physical badge. Like you go there and you pay in cash. And I guess what Ads and I did coincidentally at the same time was, yeah, we went up early. Maybe it was like 7:30 a.m. in the morning to get our
Mhm.
badges. And for those again who haven't been there, this isn't just any ordinary like conference badge. This is like I guess some sort of Raspberry Pi badge that has some sort of like a puzzle associated with it, and it looks pretty cool. So that's why people are willing to wake up, pretty early, 6:30, 7 a.m. to get one of these badges. And the thing is that there's only a limited amount of these badges, and they're cool collectible. Whereas, if you show up a little too late, that was always my concern going into the lineup. It's like, oh man, did I wake up too late? If you show up too late, you get a plain paper badge or
You get a
plastic badge.
loser badge. Yeah.
Exactly, and that's it's no bueno, no fun. So,
Yeah,
um,
it's a good time.
and that's
DefCon,
oh
yeah,
sorry,
DefCon is a beautifully weird place. Um, it's awesome. One of the reasons I love going is to hang out with friends, talk nerdy stuff. So yeah, it's awesome to be with you. And yeah, go to the lineup early to get your tickets. And you get to play a bit of like beach ball. It's a good
oh,
time.
super good time. Yeah, especially when you're with good company like myself and Ads. There it is, all the good reason to go. And one other, I guess fun fact that came up too is that whole time we were waiting in that line, and I think it was like maybe an hour or something like that.
Hmm.
But I actually ran into a moral or ethical dilemma. So my teammates up ahead of me who lined up maybe like 45 minutes ahead of us, they
Yeah.
kept texting me and they're like, hey, Jomar, let's cut to the front. Let's cut to where we're at. And I'm like, hey guys, I don't think I can swing that by. I don't think that's me. I'm not that guy. And then I'm chatting with you. I'm chatting with some other people in the line. I'm like having a good time. And then kind of like what you're mentioning, they're like, hey, we have the red beach ball. We're just around the corner. Just cut to the front. And I'm like, gosh, I can't do that. So
Yeah. No,
here I am.
you'll definitely get publicly shamed and maybe eggs thrown at you at DEF CON. So
Yeah, not the spot to do it. So yeah, I'm not a line cutter.
yes.
That's where I stand. But yeah, there's our, I guess, cold intro. But yeah, so we have Ads joining us today, and yeah, Ads, if you wanted to kind of to start and kind of talk about yourself and
Yeah,
where you're coming from.
absolutely. Yeah, my name's Ads. I've been so I initially started out as a network intern. I have no educational kind of qualifications or background. Started as a network intern. Like this seems like a long time ago now. I was like customer support advisor in a managed on-prem data center, racking Cisco firewalls. Pretty much, yeah. And then I fell in love with networking. Went up like CCNA, CCNP, CCIE kind of track. Um, and just like completely, adored it. From there, I guess when I was kind of getting to like like a higher support role at that place, that's when like a security engineer wasn't really a thing, I guess. And it was more so like the network guys would like, just pretty much manage the firewalls. And then we kind of came through this shift of like moving to cloud and more like security devices occurring, like web application firewalls, like proxies, things like Blue Coat and stuff, like back in the day. Um, and that's how I kind of got a fork into security, I guess. One thing that I've always loved networking, and I still enjoy looking at PCAPs, which is
Yeah, yeah,
nerdy, but I don't care. It's good fun. Um, yeah, from there I kind of got into network pen testing because I was more so on security, and I was really curious, and I felt like if I could build and maintain networks pretty well, it was like almost just as fun to break them. And so that's how I kind of got into that. Moved over to Canada from the UK. Moved from like London to Vancouver, which was super nice. It's really cool being in like North America region. And from there, that's how I kind of got into OWASP actually. I attended like a local OWASP chapter. I kind of got hooked on like APIs, things like that. And that's how I kind of really got into like forked into AppSec. And from there, I've kind of just, I guess I have such a passion of learning. It's almost like sowing my oats from like flunking out of school and being a butthole. But yeah, and ever since I'm kind of getting to AI security, works for like foundation model providers, securing model pipelines, RAG agents, agentic use. And now I'm really intrigued into like bolstering my adversarial capabilities in machine learning. um, so yeah, that's I guess kind of long-winded, but where I'm at or where I came from.
yeah. That's a very yeah, comprehensive background. Like, I think it's really cool coming with that full OffSec background, especially in being hands-on with the networking. It all kind of yeah,
Thank you.
come
Yeah,
together from the
but
technical side.
there's a bit of a like I guess like a network head. Packets don't lie.
Yes,
I
yes,
mean, it's always DNS. I'm just kidding, but it is always DNS. But yeah, no, I think it's a networking is well, for me at least, was a fantastic fundamental to getting security with it. Infrastructure and network security is always going to be like pillars. So that was like seemed to work out really well for myself.
right, right. Yeah, very cool. And before we dive in more into the AI security aspect, taking this, I guess, tradition from one of my old teams,
Mhm.
do you have a personal fun fact about yourself that like to share with the group?
Um, I guess I'm a pretty boring guy.
Yeah,
No,
deep into the
I
packet. That's it. Yeah,
yeah, just constantly in pickups. Um, Well, actually, Lucifer, I do love going to the Packy Hacking Village at DefCon and kind of sowing my oats there. But I guess just one thing about me, I really have a passion and such a drive for what I do. I love what I do.
mm,
However, to be honest, when I am not at a screen, I really like to just get away, embrace nature. I guess which is kind of where my moving to Vancouver came from. So honestly, you name it, anything that is like involves a board or
oh,
extreme sports like snowboarding, hiking, paddleboarding, kite surfing, you name it, like I'm down. So
oh, nice. Yeah.
yeah.
Hey, whenever you're back in Vancouver, because I guess you're in Toronto right now. Yeah, I'll be
Yes,
have to
yeah,
link up with you for one of those.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I would absolutely love to.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, let's go down the docket and yeah, we talked about or start to get into your journey as going from that red teaming network security side and then going into AI security. Yeah, just
Mm.
curious into, it seemed like you were always kind of that curious kind of individual. And I'm sure, when ChatGPT, LLMs became more prevalent, I'm sure that maybe that sparked kind of interest in you? Is that kind of how it
Yeah,
went out?
absolutely. So, I like, yeah, to be honest, I had no, when I got into AI security, I had no background on AI whatsoever. Um,
Mm.
I was obviously aware of things like ChatGPT and used them for, I guess like low-hanging fruit tasks, whether that be like punctuation or like writing, like things that models are like incredibly quick and productive at. And I was able to, fork my way into AI security by working at a foundation model provider. So I really got hands-on with understanding what like a model development pipeline looks like how like models are trained, how well I guess even before pre-training, through
Right.
fine-tuning and into release, as well as actually like securing that infrastructure and environment, as well as obviously, like LLM application security, which is like actual models in, like models in ecosystems, whether they're hooking up to other CRUD-based APIs. You've got like a agent such as ChatGPT, and it's got like, I don't know, like a plugin for GitHub or something like that. So I guess I've seen quite a few sides of the coin. And like I said, now my primary, I'm an AI security researcher at Dreadnought. And yeah, I'm really trying to, break ground, and make new grounds in AI security research, which is more on the machine learning kind of side of things.
Right. Right. Yeah, I could imagine maybe in the late 2010s, like when someone say AI, you typically think of someone from a university who has a PhD in AI, who's typically developing these. But now it's been so, I guess, yeah, the knowledge to develop these and these base models are so readily available. I'm curious in terms of going through a few tangent thoughts here. Like when I think of a red teamer, when it comes just to basic like web applications, like the
Mm,
understanding of how a basic web application and its architecture, that's pretty important. And now we're going into AI LLM systems and AI LLM based applications and knowing how those are developed.
yeah.
Is that kind of the way you approach it in terms of like knowing how they are architected as well in order to know how to then hack them
Yeah.
or
Honestly,
yeah.
exactly right. So I guess like, so my initially way that I kind of started my journey into AI, I guess, is through application security. So I was really focused at the start on agentic problems. So let's say you're doing something like prompt injection that like leads to a downstream exploit, like such as cross-site scripting or remote code execution. Um, so I guess that itself was pretty as kind of like, me researching and learning about, because we kind of have like a delineation between cybersecurity and machine learning security or ML security, whatever you want to call it. Because in ML security, we traditionally work through research papers and we work in Jupyter
Mm,
notebooks. Whereas in like, web application security, it's scanners and pen tests. So there's definitely like almost like if you were to draw like a Venn diagram, there's definitely like a gap in between the middle, and that's kind of where red teaming comes across, in my opinion. So it's first of all, like what is the threat model? Like, are these your models? Are they provider models? Where have they come from? What have they been trained on? And then, like you said, yeah, exactly, putting them into your environment. I kind of thought of it as like another layer on the stack almost from like a networking perspective and like in a weird kind of
yeah.
analogy I have in my head. So, like when it comes to web application security, you've got like inputs and outputs, sources and sinks. So when you're adding a model on top of it, you're adding, like model specific vulnerabilities which can downstream exploit. But then a lot of those actually do share that same responsibility anyway, which is things like excessive agency. So making sure that you know, a model doesn't have like over permissive controls that it could, make make a decision or force an action which is outside of what you've asked it to do. But then part of the underlying infrastructure of that as well is, like securing CRUD operations in a web application. So that's kind of where I'm trying to get at, as in there is like a shared machine learning and cybersecurity. They both have the unique challenges, but they also do share the same challenges and the same. It's kind of like a mix of both, and that's where we kind of started with the OWASP project, which I got involved
Hmm.
with when I got into AI, and was one of the things I wanted to do, contribute back to open source, and also help help me learn and speak to incredible people and be part of a community and keep up to date. So that's kind of that. Yeah, that was a no-brainer for me too.
Right. Because yeah, going into the OWASP top 10,
Hmm.
that's where you were, I think, one of the main co-contributors as part of. Just wondering, how did that come to be as well?
Yeah, so honestly, I actually generally don't kind of I actually don't really remember, to be honest. Like it feels like a long time ago now, and I think we're probably coming up to like 18, maybe like a year and a half
Okay.
life of
Yeah.
the project, which is kind of nuts when you think about it. But yeah, I think I started working in the AI around the same time, and then Steve, who is like the project lead, I think I saw like a post on LinkedIn or something, and then I just kind
Okay.
of looked at it and I was like, well, like I know OWASP and I'm very familiar with it and how top 10 projects work, and I'm like new into AI, so this is like a great opportunity. So I think, to be honest, I was just super lucky, and I think the stars kind of aligned at the same time for me, and I signed up. We had like a vulnerability entry thing, so like people
Okay.
from
Yeah.
the community would submit entries, which would then later go into like a voting mechanism, which would then, i.e., potentially make the top 10 or get merged or you know that kind of thing. And that's how I got involved. And then I became like um, I was like, I guess like a core team member where I was responsible for certain vulnerabilities that,
Okay.
that I had written. And then from there, I just wanted to get involved even more. So I ended up being, like kind of leading as a technical lead for it. And now we are here like a year and a half later, and we're going to release we're not calling it V2, we're calling it the 2025 list, because we try and stick to our like grassroots, same as other OS projects. That'll be released on November the 11th. So
Okay.
that's it.
Yeah. It's really cool to hear. And yeah, when I was on that page, um, I saw your name and I was like, oh, I know that guy. I'm going to talk to him in like 2 weeks. So cool to know that you're one of the contributors. And you mentioned before too that,
Thank you.
like, I guess the way it's, oh yeah, sure. The way that it's organized is that, like, you're responsible for certain, like, for specific
Yes.
vulnerabilities on there, or
Yeah, so we
yeah.
have like a I guess a co-working group established between us, which people who big contributors in the space, or like people like myself, before, when you like quote unquote own a specific vulnerability, so you're
Mm.
responsible for driving it, updating it, fixing it, engaging with community on it. That's how we tried to do it. So almost like kind of like a almost like a working group per vulnerability, if
Okay.
that makes sense. Like a
Right.
place in Slack where you can chat about it and share new exploits and share research and things like that. And all this R&D then goes into the actual entries themselves.
Wow.
So that's kind of how our working group is set up. But since the project obviously started, we've actually expanded a lot. There's people who work on like the PR side of things. There's people who are
Mm.
doing like
Okay.
different working groups outside of the top 10. I don't know if you saw, like we released some, like I got involved in some like the solutions guide, which is like a holistic approach to like securely deploying LM applications, just a bit more than like a top 10, more so like
Okay.
a framework. And
Right.
then we
Like,
have like other great initiatives like privacy and deepfake and CTI and things like that.
Mm.
So we have a
Okay.
lot of people doing different things.
Right. So like for deepfakes, or I guess that would be outside the scope of the top 10 for
Yeah, well,
LLMs.
yes, I mean, LLMs are only a subset of machine learning, but
Yeah.
given like the absolute revolutionary effects they had on the industry, like only made sense to put a top 10 because
Right.
put that because at the time as well, and it's still very common today that pretty much every company is integrating LLMs into their application. So that's like a very valid use case, and it's a very existential threat to a lot of applications that are out there, which is why we made that project, which was specifically aimed at that problem.
Right.
Problem's not the right word, but yeah, we like things like deepfakes and privacy are all important. You know, when it comes to things like ethical guardrails, so if you're going to talk about prompt injection, like like
Hmm.
a model telling you how to build a bomb, we obviously understand that that is a problem, and there is things that isn't right, but that isn't the right place for our project, which is why we like started creating these separate working groups. So we could have individuals contributing these great pieces of work, but it not conflict with the project. And that was a lot of the feedback after we started, right? Because the industry's rapidly changing. Rapidly um, like just going like a rocket ship. So there's a lot of moving pieces, and that was the best way for us to kind of tackle that
Right.
problem, I guess, without losing like the core focus of what we were trying to do.
Right. Right. So you're kind of saying like as it relates to trying to prompt engineer an LLM in a way to give you a guide on how to build a bomb, for example. That's like not quite on the I guess the scope of this
Yeah,
security, if more on a
yeah,
yeah.
it's out of scope. I mean, like it's out of scope for the project. Like, there is obviously problems with that, um, which is obviously, which is obvious. But
Right.
is it like a risk which is present in an LM application? Like 9 times out of 10, the answer is no. So
Mm.
we're
Okay.
more focused on like the line between machine learning and cybersecurity, which is
Right.
traditionally LMs in applications. Because yeah,
Right. And I guess that points back to, I think before you mentioned like the privacy aspect. If my
yeah. So
LLM
it's
has access to PII, a typical, security risk of any PII or confidential data being exposed. Things like those are the types of risks that you folks are, uh, you know, one of the many risks that you folks are focusing on.
yeah. I guess that in my opinion, like when it comes to the OWASP for applications, LM applications, it doesn't really make a difference what the data is because like the vulnerability or the risk is still the same. It's just a different type of data that is, potentially not sufficiently sanitized in on the inputs or the outputs. So things like PII and stuff is obviously important, and that's why we kind of like nest that in those separate working groups under the
Mm.
main I guess the main project.
And I wanted to circle back as well because I've heard you mention this, I guess, vulnerability in other talks that you
Mhm.
talked at. You brought up even before too the excessive use vulnerability. Do you have any, I guess, examples that come to mind that you can speak about,
Um,
or
so
maybe
in terms of excessive agency,
it? Yes, excessive
yeah.
agency.
Okay. So, a friend of mine, Johan Redberg, aka Embrace the Red. I'm sure a lot of people listening to this have read his fantastic content. Um, I specifically, I guess, just think of this by like default, just because, I started as well reading a lot of Johan stuff, and I still
Mm.
do. He's one of the great content creators and researcher. Um, but yeah, there was I think there was indirect prompt injection via confused deputy approach. and then the GitHub API in whichever the chatbot was operating, it had like full CRUD operations, so it was able to like change all the
Oh,
uh,
yeah.
change all the visibility for that user from like private to public. So like i.e. the POC was like you know summarizes web page with an indirect prompt injection, which has got like hidden markdown instructions or something like that. It takes over the model and it tells the model to like change all the GitHub repos from public to sorry, from private to public, i.e., let's say it's got something safe in there or it deletes the repos or something like that. That would be like a common thing for something like excessive agency. And something as simple as putting like a human in the loop element during the application
Mm,
process
right.
would be like probably one of the most rigorous mitigation methods there.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. For any sort of, I guess, major actions like that, yeah, definitely would want to have some sort of human to
Yeah, I
have that
mean, you don't want to
go back
break
and look at.
autonomy because that I guess that's what we're trying to develop. But when it comes to like those sensitive operations,
Mhm.
that could be abused by external entities, like if that's an indirect prompt injection or something like that, then then that is a risk. Yeah, so that's when we'd have to look
For
at
sure.
doing, like a multifaceted approach to mitigating that. But it's very common a human in the loop element would be able to identify that and spot it straight away. But then we also can't just rely on that. So it is you know
Right.
there is multiple strategies I guess you have to apply. Just that's one example.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely interesting. And yeah, finding the balance, I guess, as well too,
Yeah,
to
exactly.
how much
Because
human in the loop do you want versus how much agency of the agent.
yeah, yeah, and as well, I guess still to this day, I like the industry is an arms race, and companies are developing a million miles a minute. So
Mm. Yeah.
there is a very competitive space. So I appreciate and understand, that these decisions are being made because it is make or break. Like you see something every day, like someone's released a new model or someone's released like a new like a modal, or there's some kind of like groundbreaking application integration or something like that. So totally kind of get it, and it's our responsibility to help smoothen out that process.
And if we can touch on another one of these vulnerabilities, one that I found interesting, just personally, I guess I don't hear about it too much, but
Hmm.
what is it, LLM10 model theft? Do you mind touching on that one for a bit? Yeah.
Yeah, of course. So that was actually one of, I guess, the ones that I had initially wrote. Um,
Okay.
but I've actually that's actually getting scrapped in the next version. I've actually
Uh,
merged it with another one, which is now going to be called unbounded consumption, which effectively
mhm.
is a word to describe like those things all in one single umbrella because it shouldn't really have like its own specific vulnerability based on the data that we collected, and just feedback. But yeah, model theft. So I mean, obviously there is obviously model theft. Like if you're going to use something like a just-in-time solution, principle of least privilege, you've got your own internal stakeholder risks when it comes to model theft. So personnel who have access to models and all that kind of stuff. But there is there's a lot of research and proven exploits around model theft that can actually occur just from, a model serving inference on a public API endpoint. So the term like model theft, the actual vulnerability itself specifically focuses around someone like an adversary or a malicious actor being able to extract a model from an API endpoint or
Mm,
sufficient
okay.
information about the model that they're able to create a surrogate model, which is effectively like a clone from actually being able to query the model and observe inputs and outputs. So obviously model theft as well touches on things like, outputs. of logits and things like that. So it doesn't allow an adversary to, create a surrogate model, or shadow model theft is commonly what it's known as well.
Yeah, just trying to, I guess, visualize in my head. It's almost like, so you have the, I guess, the target model that maybe
Hmm.
a threat actor is trying to copy, and then you have, I guess, your own model that's giving this target model like prompts and trying to kind of assess, like,
Yes,
hey, what are the outputs that are coming out of it, and trying to extract that, I guess, any sort of like
yeah.
proprietary data or any sort of data
So
specific
you're
to that model.
almost creating a data set based on inputs and outputs from the actual model. So, whether that's a foundation model, so companies, spent billions of dollars training a model, it eventually goes out on like an inference API endpoint and someone's able to steal it at half the price that it would cost to train
Mm.
it. That's one example of a risk there. The other risk, and a lot of things that I really kind of stress about, or not stressed about, but I try to kind of get the point across, is that a lot of these vulnerabilities can be used in chain attacks. So what you should check out is a CVE called proof pudding. And proof pudding is effectively where they were able to create a surrogate model from actual extraction of the model. And it was based on a proof point email server, which detected spam email. So being able to create a surrogate model, they were able to learn how that model is detecting spam or not, which they could then use to then the downstream trigger of that is then being able to form evasion where you can essentially create payloads that will not be marked as spam.
Mm. Ah,
I hope
okay.
that makes
Right.
so you kind of like stealing the stealing the model, shadow model theft, or creating a surrogate model, putting it into like a like like sandbox white box scenario, like you have full access to
Mm.
surrogate model, so you no longer have to query like the third like the endpoint.
Right.
Then you can basically learn how it works, like in and out, in terms of like how it detects patterns and its classifiers and things like that, and then you can use that information to then attack its weaknesses.
Hmm. Okay. It sounds like a crafty way of doing, I guess, reconnaissance in a way. Because I guess typical
Yeah,
reconnaissance, like they'd maybe be alerted based off of whatever, um, yeah, flags or use cases that they have. But if you have, I guess, pretty much their model in your own environment, then you can kind of just poke and prod without having it to worry
yeah,
about it.
exactly. You're effectively reverse engineering it by having a white box scenario of it after you've done the first step.
It's really interesting. Yeah, for those listening, I guess I'll have to grab that. Sorry, mind repeating again? What
It's
was
okay.
the?
Proof pudding is the
Yeah.
CVE.
Okay. Yeah.
It's just a POC that I'm aware of, but fantastic research. So kudos to the researchers. That's where I started to learn about things like model theft, and that helped me evaluate how big the risk actually is, not just seeing
Mm.
it as like someone could steal your model and they might do that for financial gain, or like nation state and things like that. It can
Mm.
actually be used for other threats, which is a big problem.
Right. And then, this threat in particular being uh, the age-old phishing emails, always prevalent, I guess, in
Yeah,
realm of normal security.
exactly. At the end of the day, if you can send emails that are not marked as spam, you have a higher fidelity of getting phishing emails through, and you get. And so it's all kind of yeah, very well calculated.
Yeah, very interesting. Um, yeah, before we end off, I think we had this last topic here, which is sort of related to the excessive agency
Mm.
um, vulnerability. Anthropic, like a couple weeks ago, released their computer use, I guess, feature out of their, yeah, using Claude 3.5, where pretty much it gives the LLM the ability to access uh, pretty much like a desktop environment within a container, and you pretty much just type a certain prompt. And earlier this week, I was just saying, hey, can you build me a RAG model and train it based off of some data, based on the latest security research data on red teaming with LLMs or red teaming LLMs themselves. And it was able to get the right dependencies installed, put all that together. It was able to, I think it was, get which library or which source it pulled some of these papers from, but it was able to eventually find those sources and ended up creating, within maybe 10 minutes or so and 40 cents worth of credits to put together this RAG application. And I was like, oh, that's pretty handy. And throughout the process, I think maybe a couple times it asked me, or it ran into errors and then it gave me a few options like, oh, we had troubles with the some of the libraries. Would you like to try out this different library instead, or would you like to try out maybe setting up a more simple kind of environment or architecture to create this RAG application? And then I just picked the option 1, 2, or 3, and then I was able to put that together. So I found it pretty interesting to be like, oh, wow, I don't have to.
Yeah,
It's pretty interesting to just type in the prompt now and have it pretty much
super
put
cool.
that together for me. Although I will have to, it does have some bugs. Like when I asked it to tell me about the OWASP top 10 for LLMs, within its visual desktop, it opened up Firefox. It typed in OWASP top 10 for LLMs, and then I guess in Firefox it showed like the first 3 or 4 option ended up being ads. And then it was like, oh, I don't know what's going on here. There's a bunch of ads. I don't know what to click. So you kind of have to like take control. It's like, okay, scroll to this one, this link
Yeah,
over here, and you kind of have to handhold it a tiny bit.
yeah, SEO seems to be a bit of a problem for RAG that I've actually noticed myself. But no, honestly, super cool.
Mm.
Best 40 cents spent
It's
ever,
that's it.
right? I'm pretty sure like you can maybe get 2 Timbits for 40 cents nowadays.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, in comparison. But yeah, incredible research. Full respect to Anthropic. They actually
Mhm.
were very open and transparent about, the security risks that this brings, as well as obviously, the fact that like where they're at and what they're working on, which I really, I really dig that. I thought it was really good of them. Um, I think, like you said, one thing actually just kind of I was thinking when you said about the other package dependency because the other one didn't work, something like that. I think there's a couple of things to be said for it from like a securing it perspective, or like being aware of the security risks. And the first one is what we call in the OWASP project is misinformation. So
Mm.
misinformation can be, come from the classic misinformation was, I think it was like Samsung at the start. There was, source code leaked into ChatGPT, um, something like that. That's how it started. But with misinformation as well as other things that come like package squatting, which is kind of exactly what I was thinking of. So I think as well, like all these model providers are very transparent upfront about it. I think it's our responsibility as humans to not fully take for take 100% for granted what model responses are. Always verify your inputs. I mean, a lot of models are trained on things like GitHub, things like that. GitHub is full of malware,
Mhm.
so just like you would tell someone not to find some code out of GitHub and run it on your machine. Same applies. Like you're just eliminating like a layer of that, but the point of what you're actually doing is the same. So those same guidelines are applicable here and should be taken into account. Um, there is things like hallucinations, they can be less of a risk, but things like package spotting and hallucinations have actually been like a thing. And I have seen some stuff from some research from like JFrog and other companies that have actually been able to publish some cool stuff. Um, and then, yeah, I guess like with agentic use, it comes with its, responsibilities. So make sure you're verifying. So, you know, don't be telling Claude to visit a website that potentially is like downloading a C2 onto your
Yeah,
box
yeah,
and spawning a shell. But I guess like the thing that I really think about, if I look at it from like a just a basic perspective, is all these fundamental security things that we've been thinking of for years, they all still very much apply here. And I think with
Mhm.
taking those, you can reduce the element of risk so much. I mean, obviously, if you're going to put Anthropic's computer use in a VM and sit it on the internet, then obviously, yes, that is not like your risk is much broader at that point. But when you're talking about like a local computer use, yeah, I think it's super cool, and I'm very impressed that just the work that goes into training these models and things like that. But um, yeah, definitely, don't forget about what we've been doing in this from the security perspective all these years, because a lot of it is still really relevant here. Um, we're just using generative models and just models for productivity, which is one thing they're incredible at. I'm a big fan of like harnessing my skill set, whether that's like adversarial or even a defensive, or even just like starting a project, like you said, like you were messing around with Anthropic. Um, I'm a big believer in adopting AI, so I'm all for using it for productivity. Just be careful when you're using it, and
yeah. Especially with I guess companies adopting these and giving these agents, I guess, more and more access to particular data sets or yeah, like in computer use, I think they have like a label or they have some sort of a warning Anthropic puts up saying, hey, don't give computer use access to like any sort of accounts with special privileges or any sort of user accounts
yeah,
while you're on
exactly right. It's
Firebox.
like the same when you spin up a Docker container, and if you've ever used sudo, it'll tell you like do not run Docker as root. It's um, full respect to Anthropic. They were very transparent and open about it, and I think that's really good due diligence from them to spread that educational awareness for folks who may not be aware of that, and it favors well for both sides, for consumers and for builders.
Yeah, so I guess looking at your docket, those are topics that we had for now. Anything else that you wanted to chat about or anything else come to mind?
Um,
Any
I
other plugs you want to put in?
I mean, yeah, I won't use any, I won't reference any plugs or anything. But one thing, like generic, I guess, thank you so much for having me. It was a
Oh, for sure.
pleasure. Really cool to chat to you and see you again. Hopefully see you at the con this year or next year. Sorry,
Yeah,
yeah, 2025. Yeah,
yeah,
next year.
yeah,
Same
yeah,
thing.
that'd be great. Yeah,
But yeah,
time
no,
flies.
absolutely. I'm like say I'm very focused on machine learning and AI security research right now. So just come and talk to me. Like I'm always up for talking about security, AI security, a good old packet capture, anything you name. So I think it's a great gift being able to um, you know, learn. Um, feedback is a gift as well. So it's great just talking to folks in the industry, broadening your network, um, and just educating everyone.
Yeah, it's great to hear. Yeah, it was a cool thing about the InfoSec community. Everyone's always happy to share what
Yeah,
they've learned.
exactly. Like one thing I was I was always really I was always really taken back at how welcoming and just professional and experienced and cool the OWASP Vancouver chapter were, the gang there. So I actually got involved and became I was on the board in OWASP Vancouver as well. And I do the same in Toronto. There's so many incredible individuals who are already contributing to the space. So I encourage everyone just to get involved. It's one of the biggest you know CTFs and research papers and everything are great, but sometimes just networking and engaging with folks and picking up things is just sometimes like one of the most productive and efficient ways of finding out this stuff and opportunities that then may arise.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, Ads, and yeah, a big thank you to you as well. I know this is our first episode, so it's great to have you as our
Yeah,
first guest.
number one,
Number one, that's it. Our topic.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, thank you so much. It was a pleasure. And yeah, best of luck with the podcast.
Awesome. There we have it, folks. We'll put Ads's usual contact info on bottom in the description here, LinkedIn, etc., GitHub. But thanks for listening.
Yeah.
Thanks, y'all.
Have a great day.